But I would say their number one complaint is you can't control what people are doing when they leave this office. That's 100% correct. But the more that you lose users to those patients and hear what their challenges are. The vice president of a disaster response company for years. When you talk about a rapid ramp up in deployment, we would go from 3 or 4 people to 200 to 300 people within 3 to 4 weeks. We would be on scene at a day after doing flyovers, understanding the layout of the land, and then we would scale operations. So when you talk about having to have all your ducks in a row, in scaling organizations that fast, that is a lot. I like to back into everything that I do. So I look at, I need to be here. What is my target of where I need to go? And then what steps do I need to do to get there? It all still goes back to connecting with your users. What makes this platform, what we call sticky, makes a user go back onto their platform every single day to check 3, 4, 5 times a day, 6 to 7 times a day. The more that you can create that engagement, the money will take care of itself. If you can show the engagement and show they're utilizing the service, that the service is working, the payers start to change as well. It's like not only getting the business, it's more keeping the business.
How do we create sustainable models of care that actually meet people where they are and prove ROI? With over 15 years of leadership experience spanning disaster relief, healthcare staffing, and now digital health, Matthew Tremellen brings an operational rigor that's hard to find in startup spaces. As CEO and founder of DiabeticU, he's created a digital health platform made to transform the way we understand and support diabetes management in the real world. I'm Christina. This is Outcomes.
So, do you think patients are provided sufficient education on new diabetes diagnosis and diabetes management by their PCPs?
No, absolutely not. I think that one of the bigger challenges is that there is a lot of education that's needed. And essentially, when you're diagnosed with diabetes, you should get a comprehensive education packet that goes over everything you need to know. I think that a part of that, would really dial into, when you get diagnosed, especially from a patient side, you're told to eat less carbs, eat less sugar, add in exercise, take medication if it's been prescribed. But there's not really a how-to on what that looks like. And there's, when you talk about carbs, there's differences in carbs. There's complex and simple carbs. That's not explained. There's plating methods and all kind of different things you can do from a management style to be able to manage your diabetes better. But the most important part of that is understanding it. And I think that the educational resources are out there, but they're not properly given.
Important is it to have people with lived experience with diabetes involved in creating solutions for diabetes management?
I think it's critical. One of the biggest challenges, especially with diabetes, and I know from your work as well, you would know that, is that adherence to care plans is the number one factor in major problems and diabetes complications. And the reason that is that tools and solutions aren't really taking into account the person, the individualized person that's living with diabetes. You can create every solution in the world and every care plan in the world, but if you're not thinking about their lifestyle and how they live their lifestyle, and we're not talking about lifestyle management, you're really just talking about their lifestyle. Some people have 3 kids and a big family, and they're cooking larger meals for an entire family. So it's hard to segment out diabetes related meals, or they're on the go because they have 3 kids and they're going to practices and all these different things. So they're eating out a lot. And there's a lot of different factors that go into your everyday decision making when it comes to your personal diabetes management, that if you're not involving the end user and creating tools that are helping them self-manage, you're failing. It's one of the big challenges is that most people get discouraged. And the reason they get discouraged is because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to manage their diabetes. They are confused about what to eat. Perfect example is if you go to the grocery store just under the understanding that I need to eat less carbs, I need to eat less sugar, I need to do better, right? And you go through the grocery store, you could sit there for 10 hours looking through every label, only to realize that, wow, almost everything has carbs and sugar. So if you don't understand how to navigate that, imagine those frustration points. Think about you're out at a restaurant and, well, it's time to order. A lot of restaurants, especially in, American restaurants, don't have the best options. You go to a lot of restaurants that are really set around bar food and a lot of that's fried, or it's, there's not great side options and things like that. So you don't want to eat the same thing every time you go out. So it's trying to navigate those type of challenges, thinking about how to solve my individual challenges every day. If you're not thinking about that, you're failing your user.
So let's talk more about the user, because I know that you're big on personalization and the user experience. So first of all, you rolled out DiabeticU a few months ago.
Correct.
And so based on the feedback and kind of the user, don't know the phrasing, but utilization so far, the metrics that you have so far, have you seen that it's helping people and people are using and tracking their meals and kind of using that real-time guidance that you have?
So the first part of that answer is we have not technically rolled out yet. We are essentially live, as you would call it, but we're really doing live testing right now.
Oh, okay.
We're getting ready to launch and go to market here soon. But through our beta testing, we did learn a lot. And one of the things that we're truly focused on is building the tools that our user needs, that our users want. So where we've built the base of our product, there's going to be a lot more to come that's really focused on solving that user's needs from their everyday diabetes management. And we have seen that, the feedback that we get is it's refreshing to have a application or a product that's really focused on solving our needs, our everyday needs, things that we need to help manage better, because 99% of those decisions are made at home, not in the doctor's office.
So that is a common perception, though, that you hear a lot in healthcare is, a lot of people say, like, we can't manage what people do outside of the four walls of the hospital, but it sounds like, you can create the proper tools and the proper supports to help modify behaviors and change, support positive behaviors.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that. And if you think about that statement in itself, right? When you have your healthcare workers that one of their main complaints, and I would say their number one complaint is you can't control what people are doing when they leave this office. That's 100% correct. But the more that you listen to those users, to those patients, and hear what their challenges are, right? What are the challenges getting to where they want to be, even a little bit, right? And when you think about lifestyle changes, it's not about making 100 lifestyle changes this week. It's about adopting one lifestyle change at a time that fits into your lifestyle. We can sit there and go by the books of like, oh, if this person doesn't change their entire lifestyle, they're going to have major problems. But the reality of it is history has showed us, as well as the data shows us, that these people, and when you say that the patients that are living with these chronic conditions are not able to make that change. So why are they not able to make that change? What are the challenges that are sitting in front of them? How can you help solve those challenges and really make those modifications one step at a time? Maybe they like burgers, right? Well, what about taking a bottom bun off a burger and scooping the bread out of the top bun? Now, okay, you may have eliminated 40% of the carbs on that burger. Okay, still eat the burger for now. You've made a lifestyle modification that still fits. It's a little extra 1 or 2 steps that you make when you're going out to dinner, but it still fits what your lifestyle is. Learning to do things like that, learning to make lifestyle changes over time that in turn, step by step, you keep getting closer to your goal.
So do you use those feedback loops in your development of DiabeticU?
Absolutely. For us, that is the most critical piece. That is what we will not only use now, but all the way through. If we're not listening to our users, then we're failing our users. And that becomes the most important part. I think that for me and our organization, that not only is our number one focus, but it's something that I really like to tie into as well. We're starting to hold little mini town halls as well as direct contact one-on-one with users where I'm involved in that process. Because not only being from the top of the organization, being the CEO, but more importantly, I understand the journey. I've been living with type 2 diabetes for 6+ years now and come from a family that's riddled with it. So I've been in and around it for over 30 years. So I do understand and I'm able to connect and empathize. But more importantly, everybody has different challenges, right? What my challenges are managing it are different from other people's. And so I like to hear those challenges and hear where their setbacks are, things, and think tank different tools that will help them really manage their diabetes. One of the interesting things is that what has come out of that already is we've done, quite a bit of conversations with users. I've had conversations with users myself. And one of the things was, that really stood out was from multiple different users is like, okay, look, I get going, having a meal plan, or I get, all these different things. But my bigger challenge is I get to a restaurant and I'm sitting at a restaurant and I'm not able to really look, and most menus don't have carb breakdowns and sugar breakdowns and things like that. What am I supposed to eat? So the first thing we did was we created smart eating assistants, but that was, it's a good tool, but it's not for us, not 100%. It's a great tool because what you're able to do is, talk to our app and just say, hey, I'm at XYZ restaurant, and what are options that I can eat? And you can go in as depth as you want, or hey, I'd like to eat something that's low on carbs and high on fiber. What are my options? But what we also decided to do was work on our geolocation services. So right now we're building out a geolocation service that we're almost in the process of, that you can step into a restaurant. As soon as you step into the restaurant, the app will actually recognize you're at the restaurant. You open the app and say view options, and it'll show you the options that fit for you right there at the at the restaurant. So that came directly from listening to users. And those are the type of tools that we want to keep building and keep finding what needs to be built for our users. What are their needs? What do they need that's going to help them get to the next step?
Like having a little diabetic coach right in your pocket. That's amazing.
And that's part of the goal, right? We want to pair it, with clinical as well, and have the telehealth ability to have our users get personalized telehealth with certified diabetes educators and registered dietitian nutritionists. But the most important part is exactly what you're saying, is having that little coach with you at all times, having the ability to lean on something that's helping you navigate through those more challenging decisions and moments.
That's such a important thing. Going back to how a lot of healthcare systems kind of struggle and have that complaint with, like, patients aren't, compliant, or they're not engaged in their care, or whatever. But it sounds like when you align to their specific needs and what they're saying their needs are, you get, higher levels of engagement and deeper involvement. What are 3 things, just off the top of your head, that health systems typically think that people with diabetes need versus what they actually need?
That's an interesting one. So if I was thinking about that and going into a doctor's visit, okay, great. I know what my A1C is. Okay, that sounds good. What do I need to get down? What I actually need is to understand, okay, if my A1C is 6.8 or 7.4, well, what are the true steps that I need to take to get down? And what does an A1C even mean? It's like, okay, great. I mean, I understand it, obviously being in the position that I'm in, but if you're just a regular diabetes patient, but what is an A1C? What does it really mean? Okay, I get it, it's my glucose levels, but how do I get down to those lower levels by whatever modifications I need to make? I think that another thing that would be of course they need medication, right? But what is this medication actually doing for me? Explaining it out, understanding what the medication is actually doing. I mean, being fair, I was on metformin for years before I stopped taking it, and I had no clue how it worked, what it did. I just knew I had to take it. Right. So, okay, I know that I need to take this, but okay, what does this actually do to me? I mean, from a lowering your glucose level standpoint or not? I don't understand. I need to understand that. Can't think of a third one right now, but
That's okay. I'm sure it'll come to you. I have a lot more questions. I kind of want to piggyback off of that. So when you talk about getting that getting that education in kind of like in a more accessible way, getting these non-clinical kind of supports to people. I think you had mentioned on another podcast that you didn't even know what a diabetic educator was.
Yeah.
For a while. What's the most impactful disease management principle that most systems miss?
Well, I'm sorry, what was that?
What do most health systems miss about helping people manage their disease?
Personalization.
Personalization.
You
Yep.
know, I really think, I do think it's understanding the unique needs and challenges of that person. I think we're going into an age of data that is really going to change a lot of things. And what I mean by that is, you really look at platforms that are connecting and aggregating data. And ours is one of them, and there's a lot of different ones. You have remote patient monitoring, you have all these different things, but the data is what is really needed, right? Is they're looking at glucose levels. When you're connected to a CGM and have the data of every 5 minutes of glucose levels, you have the data of your fitness tracking and steps and sleep and stress. And you're able to see all that. And then, we're working on a lot of different ways where it makes it easier to track your meals, and you're able to track your meals and medication. And if you have all that data, even enough data, right? You don't need people to track every single meal of every single day. But if you can start to see data of what they're doing, then you can truly personalize and meet them where they're at, right? And that becomes the bigger part of the journey. How do you, instead of saying, hey, I need you here, how do you bring that personalization to them, meet them where they're at, see what their challenges are, and then help them, guide them along in their health journey?
Do you think that leads to sustainable lifestyle changes?
I think so. I think that's a very loaded word, right? It's just, it does. I do believe that it does, but everybody's different, right? One platform is going to work for one person. Another platform is going to work for another person, right? It's like, if you think of just health and fitness in itself, right? How many people at the beginning of every single year start their weight loss journey? This is my year to get healthier. And they go about it in so many different ways. And some are successful, some fall off. And some use this platform or that platform. I think it does become a situation where it's never ever going to be a one size fits all. But the more that you're focused on meeting them where they're at, I think the better you're going to find lifestyle changes come along.
That is definitely fair. So it's, about balance over perfection, and, that personalization over rigid compliance within, the standard typical kind of regimen that they talk about. So what do you say to people that say, you're overcomplicating it, Matt? Like, you just have to, cut out carbs and go to the gym and take your insulin?
They have no idea what they're talking about. Being somebody that has lived it, and being fair, I'm at the point now where I don't take any medication anymore. I'm down to a 6.2, looking to get that under 6 into the 5 ranges. And I do that all by managing it myself with no medication, paying attention to what I eat, exercising, the whole 9 yards. But the reality of it is it's just not that simple of an answer, right? Especially now, remember, I'm on a 6-year journey. I'm 6 years into this. So I understand a lot more because, one, I've been very active. Two, I've been in this company for 2 years and have had to do a tremendous amount of research. So I have learned a lot more. But the reality of it is when I started, it was a very tough journey for 2 years of learning what to eat, how to eat. It's not just don't eat carbs and don't eat sugar and work out or whatever they tell you. It's not just that. There's so much that you have to learn. And the truth is that data really paints that picture and that story for you, right? When I'm able to look into technology, and I don't even just say our app. I know there's platforms that, have this, the ability to look in this technology. But if we're able to go in and look, and I can see my glucose levels every 5 minutes within a technology, and I can see when I ate, what it did, when I worked out, what it did, then I can start to understand where I'm making strides and where I'm falling back. If I'm getting spike reports to see what meals cause glucose spikes and how bad that spike was, well, I guess what? I'm starting to understand what I'm eating and how it's impacting me. When I am making the modifications that we discuss, right? Say, perfect example, we talked about the burger. And I'm going to use burgers a lot because I'm an avid burger eater, right? I have to. And it's one of those things that I just enjoy a good old cheeseburger. But the reality of it is, I know now from data that when I go and get a salad, a burger, cheeseburger, and a Coke Zero, which is kind of my go-to meal when I have a burger, I'll take the bottom bun on off. I scoop the bread out of the top because I do like that little bit of taste of bread. It still makes it taste like a burger to me. I haven't got into the lettuce wraps yet. But with that, when I do that, I know that when I eat that way, I don't spike. So, but if I go eat a burger and fries and a Coke, I'd probably be through the roof. But I've made that's a lifestyle modification that came from data, came from understanding, realizing, and being able to play with my food and come up with perfect solutions for myself.
So it sounds like it's been like this 6-year long journey of really collecting these different data points from the research that you literally go out and do, but as well as watching your own reactions and your own kind of personal indicators. So it sounds like, with this platform that you created, it's a way to accelerate that for people that are kind of newly diagnosed and kind of still trying to figure out, trying to collect these data points and as far as what works for them. And, can I remove the bun on the burger at this point? Or do I, or am I at the point where I can't have any, you know what I mean? I'm sure it's, very complex and individualized.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that is, the reality of what we're really trying to help with people living the everyday struggle of managing diabetes or even pre-diabetes, right? And it's looking at that and understanding, starting to see the different options that you have, the different changes that will make a difference to you. And I want to go back to the education too, because, you talked about the education a bit already and thinking about, let me ask you a question. With just social media, are you on TikTok at all?
I'm just a lurker. I don't
Okay,
post.
so what we've seen is a lot of people get a lot of their information from Twitter, or X now, TikTok or Instagram, right? They're getting their actual education from that. And one of the reasons that we've seen is they like the little 45-second, 1-minute videos, flipping through them quickly, and they don't have to sit there and engage, right? So we're creating education that's with 45-second and 1-minute videos that are more done, in the sense of like TikTok and Instagram style videos to meet users to what they're used to and what they like. It's the same education that you were giving them that we would put into an educational format, but we're reformatting it to meet them where they're at.
Awesome. You also have partnered with provider side. And so when you have these providers who are now kind of collecting and in charge of all this new patient data that they otherwise never would have collected or known about the patient, how do you help guide them as far as their workflows and how to look at that data and how to guide patients on how to use the data?
So what we've been doing a lot of is speaking with the providers. That becomes one of the most important parts as well. We are working on multiple different things when it comes to how we're relaying this information to providers and also how they're coding it and getting paid for it, right? Because there are ways that providers get paid for reading that information prior to going on a visit, right? So all of that is very, very important in the process, right? Because, at the end of the day, it's important to be able to have a workflow that works for both our users, our patients, and the providers as well, right? And of course, the systems that they're a part of, right? You're not just going to expect to give a comprehensive report and now all of a sudden that's part of that 15-minute visit that the physician gets. They have to read a report first. Okay, well, if they're getting paid for that report, that's a different scenario. So if they're able to get paid for that report, now we're working with the physicians to how do you want to see the report? We have what we've already seen and what we've already started working on because of provider feedback is we have a overview and it's a summary of a 90-day report because they get a 90-day report. Usually if you're seeing your doctor every 3 months or so, we can do up to 90-day report. Our users can create custom reports based on day ranges or a 30-day or a 60-day, all those different things. But with that, we give 90 days worth of data. So it is a very long report. Now, do they need to look at every single day of the report? No, but if they want to, it's there. right? It's just as easy to create a 90-page report as it is for us to create the summary. So we have a summary overview of how that person is doing, as well as an individualized every single day. And that's going over to those providers. If they're able to read that report and get paid for that report, now they're able to go into that visit knowing, oh, hey, they've actually upped their exercise from last month. The last month they were averaging, 18 minutes a day of exercise. Now they're averaging 24. Okay, now I have an understanding of what they're doing. Or they were averaging X amount of calories per day or per meal, per lunch or per breakfast or per dinner. Now they're doing differently. And being able to see those different things, and now they have better data to work off when they're having that sit down and that 15-minute conversation.
Okay. So yeah, it sounds like it gives them the ability to have these deeper kind of understandings of the patient. And so that way, when you have that appointment, when you have that 15-minute slot, it's more impactful, it's more informative for the patient, but also for the provider too. Yeah, almost sounds like it over the long run, it might even like save them time and save them that, effort, as opposed to just kind of like figuring things out after a crisis happens and about what's working and what's not working for the patient. So what are some things we kind of talked about some of the data that's being collected, but what is some of those important metrics that are being captured by the platform that these traditional electronic health records just aren't capturing?
So from a capturing standpoint, it's the collected data across all, right? And it's the aggregate of all of the data together. Being able to look at on a daily basis, or from a daily micro level of what they had for this breakfast, what caused a spike, getting a spike report that shows actually what meals caused them to have spikes, and being able to look at that, being able to look at this, exercises, not just steps per day or exercise, minutes per day, but being able to see that, hey, well, they're eating lunches that are heavy lunches, but then they have an exercise after the lunch. Being able to see all those data points together and understand how it's correlating between each other, I think that's becomes a bigger impact of how you're able to assess where their challenges are or what they're doing well as well.
So you consolidate data from 300 devices. I think I saw that. And it's a bring your own device model.
Yeah, essentially we have the ability to connect with a lot of different devices. I mean, that's just, devices are like phones, right? Everybody has a different style phone. Some people have Samsungs, some people have the iPhone, maybe the iPhone 9 or 10 or 11 or whatever the case, the Android 20 or 24, 25. There's a lot of different options for devices, especially when you get into digital weight scales and fitness trackers and things like that. So we want to make sure that we're device agnostic, giving them the ability. Now we do and are working on plans that will offer certain specific devices for them through those plans.
Amazing. I was actually just going to ask you that. So, and I know you're still in building phase, but over the course of some time, and do you see a strategy in mind? It sounds like you already have one, but in terms of like reaching these higher need communities who, may not be able to access the kinds of devices like the Aura rings or whatever, or may not just have like the infrastructure to support them, like they may not have like a consistent power source or whatever. Do you have like anything in mind and how to reach that population? Because it sounds like, I mean, these are, when you think of the broader scope of things, these tend to be the same people with the worst outcomes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's something we've been looking at quite in depth. Being able to serve underserved populations is one of the things that really stick out for us. Looking at things like, is there organizations that we can partner with for this? We've been looking at the FQHC model and looking at FQHCs, and is there opportunities for us to create programs within an FQHC that is reaching those populations and serving those populations. So there's a lot of things that we're doing when it comes to that. There are, of course, a lot of challenges as well, right? We're a technology, so do they have access to the proper devices for it? Even for our platform to be on the right type of phone, because it has to be a certain level of phone or higher just to be able to support that type of function. But also looking at, do they have access to those devices? Power, that becomes when it becomes more of a challenge, but the device access to us is something that we're really looking at and how that we can go about solving that in certain ways.
Have you partnered with any like community organizations, or is that more like down the road at some point? But do you have it in mind to like maybe partner with any community organizations that kind of work with those social determinants of health?
Yeah, absolutely. We have not as of yet, but that is something that we've already started the process of looking into, and would be very open and more not even open. We would already be technically set in motion to work on setting some of those up.
Amazing. Best of luck with that. That's a really high need. I want to take it back to your disaster relief days
Oh, wow. All right, let's go.
back in the day, because I'm curious on, you know, your past experience with this rapid deployment of resources. Did that kind of give you some of the knowledge that you needed to be able to deeply understand the needs of populations?
So I'm very impressed with this question. And the reason why is I've never talked about this at all, but that experience was one of the most incredible experiences because you're helping a lot of people, but it is rapid deployment. But more importantly, it taught me so much in how to build and scale. The vice president of a disaster response company for years. And what we did was we were part of Operation Blue Roof, which is a actual FEMA funded program after hurricanes that people have damage to their roof. It's an operation that essentially covers their roofing, their roofs that have any potential leaks and stuff like that, so that their homes don't get any further damage until insurance is able to, make their claims and they're able to get their homes fixed, right? One of the biggest challenges with hurricanes is it's a lot of wind damage. And with that wind damage, it's ripping pieces of roofs off or their tiles off and creating leaks. And of course, most hurricane regions are heavily rain regions as well. So after that roof is damaged, and every time it rains, if it's leaking in your house, it's ruining your stuff. So they have a great program that covers that. Now, with that being said, that is run by the Army Corps of Engineers, and they are a speed of deployment type of organization. So with that being said, we would go into, and we've done at that, the time of me finishing working there, I think I have done 12 or 13 different hurricanes that we've been a
Wow.
part of. And when you talk about a rapid ramp up in deployment, we would go from zero, well, 3 or 4, because there was 3 or 4 of us technically at the organization full time. We would go from 3 or 4 people to 200 to 300 people within 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. We would be on scene at the hurricane a day after, it passed, doing flyovers, doing assessments, understanding the layout of the land, and then we would scale operations. And when you talk about, not only 300, 400, there were 200 to 300 people. I mean, I think our largest was like 420 organization. You're talking about in 3 to 4 weeks, not only bringing them on, but you're training, you're equipping, you're onboarding 300 plus people. So when you talk about having to have all your ducks in a row, be confident in scaling organizations that fast, that is a lot. But I said that to say that makes everything else I do pretty easy at the, in the grander scheme of things. And it gave me a great outlook on how to scale organizations. But more importantly, what it really gave me is the confidence to scale organizations with no problem. Able to look at what needs to be done in any situation and assess it, figure it out, and start to move forward. And that has helped me tremendously in this as well, because I understand how to make things happen faster and at a bigger scale at times, I guess.
Give us the tea. So what is walk us through that. So for those of us who don't get it, give me like the first steps
Of scaling?
Yeah, on how you make decisions.
Well, so, the first part is, what do you need, right? And looking, you have to look at, I like to back into everything that I do. So I look at, I need to be here. What is my target of where I need to go? And then what steps do I need to do to get there? So I look at the bigger picture and say, okay, well, the bigger picture is we need to do X, right? What are the steps now that we need to do to get there? So I like to always back into everything that I'm doing. That'd be the first thing. And the second point is, looking at when you know, okay, here's what I need to do to get there. What are the tasks that I'm putting together to get there? Right. And of course, when you're looking at that speed to operation, that's a little bit different. You have to be dead on target with everything you're doing. But I always look at, okay, if I'm saying I need to get to this, whether it's sales number or this organizational number, I need to have this done by X amount of date. All right, well, this is the plan that I'm going to do to get there. What am I doing every day to get towards that plan? And building out a plan for each day to get to that bigger plan.
So that also helps me understand a little bit more about why you're so big on engaging in feedback and just understanding who your target user is, because you're reverse engineering for actual engagement and utilization of the product. So that's awesome. That is a really, really, really helpful. So talk about more about scalability. So I noticed DiabeticU also has partnerships with employers, like with self-insured employers for they pay member per month. Is there a reason for that specific funding model?
So we that's not our only model. So what
Oh,
we
okay.
are focused on is actually MCOs, managed care organizations, accountable care organizations, concierge medicine, and self-insured payers. We do believe that the landscape is going to change over the next 3 to 4 years of where that payer comes from. We do believe that now that you're starting to see more data come across that digital solutions make a difference, you're going to start seeing in the future digital solutions being paid for by insurances. And I think the bigger step is when it's covered by Medicare. Medicaid is going to be the bigger step, and that'll bring that flow in. But yeah, for currently, that is where we're at.
I ask because I'm curious, because I've spoken with a lot of digital health companies, and one of the biggest issues is sometimes can be with that scalability and with like sustainability, because it's sometimes easier to get that one time like kind of payout and kind of get the business now, but it seems like you've kind of worked out something that's a little bit more sustainable over the long term.
Well, and you look at it too of, it's one thing to get the business. It's another thing to keep the business. So I think it all still goes back to connecting with your users, right? What makes this platform, what we call sticky, right? What makes the platform sticky, that makes a user go back onto their platform every single day to check, are they checking on their technology 3, 4, 5 times a day, 6 to 7 times a day? The more that you can create that engagement, the money will take care of itself essentially at the end of the day, right? If you can show the engagement and show that they're utilizing the service, that the service is working, then the payers start to change as well. But it's like not only getting the business, it's more keeping the business, right? And I think to keep the business, you have to have those users that are utilizing your platform on a continuous basis.
Well, because you're not just tracking the utilization either. It sounds like you're also tracking. I mean, even though I know you're in beta testing, but you just started, but you're also tracking outcomes. You're tracking, people getting better as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, we track everything across the board, right? We want to, not only do we want to, of course, the number one thing that we're focused on is getting that person healthier, right? Lowering A1Cs and increasing increasing their activity, their health literacy, things like that. But the reality of it is we're also focused on, creating more tools, better tools that keep them utilizing it and keep them active every day.
And for healthcare systems, what are 3 ways that they can start to better understand their population so that they can get that better engagement?
Well, I'd say first engaging with the patient groups, understanding the true direct needs of your population is the most important part. The more that you're in tune with essentially your customer, right? A patient is still a customer. So the more you're in tune with your customer and their specific needs, the better you're going to do. I would say that the other aspect of that is understand where the problems and the challenges of your customer are as well, right? When you think about adherence being such a challenge, well, what are those problems that is causing adherence to be a problem, and then working on solutions to fix it from that manner.
And in the last 5 years, how have you seen diabetic care change and evolve?
Well, I would say, the biggest thing is that on coverage, and that coverage of things like CGMs, I think is probably the best aspect of diabetes care right now. If you're able to look at data from CGMs and getting that continuous loop of feedback of how people are doing, I think is the most important part of that. But I think what's more important is that those devices are starting to be covered more and more, right? First it was just type 1, and now it's insulin dependent type 2s, and hopefully soon they'll cover a CGM for any person that has type 2, or type 1. So I think that those, from the coverage standpoint, I think that's the best part. And then technology is advancing. I think the great part about it is that once you have a lot of companies like ours, right? We're not coming in as the first in the market, but the reality of it is that market, the companies like ours create that competition in the market that makes products better, right? Because when you come in as a new company, like ours, we have Livongo and Clinio and, a few other larger companies that are already providing in the same space, not the same solutions, but in the same space. And when you're coming in as a company like ours, we have to have a value proposition that makes us stand out a little bit more or differently, right? We don't need to stand out more. We just need to stand out differently, right? Because it's a big market share, right? When you talk about diabetes care, it's a multi-billion-dollar market a year. No one's trying to take over the entire market, because you can't, because you're dealing with customers, and it's just why there will always be 70, 80 different sodas on the market. And yeah, Coke has a big share and Pepsi has a big share, but hey, Sprite does well and all these other ones do well as well, because people have choices and people like to have choices. And what works for one person doesn't work for the other person. So with us, I think, and not even just us, but what I think is the powerful part about that is that for other companies to come into the market, they're creating more and more solutions that are better or different. So you're now getting more access to care and more options for that care to fit what you need, right? We are not claiming to be the application that every single person living with diabetes is going to want to use and have to use, but we want to be the one that a lot of people want to use because it fits them and where they're at in their journey. It fits their lifestyle. And this is a platform that works for them better than the other platform.
Definitely sounds like a really big part of your whole journey has been, getting very clear about the kind of problem that you're solving, and, kind of going back to reverse engineering ways to solve that problem for a diverse set of people, as opposed to, trying to solve every problem or, be everything to everyone. You're solving this very specific problem for, all kinds of people in every, different walk of life.
Absolutely.
I guess, like, last question, is there any advice that you would give to other digital health startups that are kind of just a few steps behind you?
Yeah, no, I think that the advice that I would give is just be relentless in your pursuit of what you're trying to solve. No one hits it out of the park, on the first try. And you're always going to have the naysayers that, that'll tell you, hey, this is already being done, or this is not going to work, or whatever the case may be. But if you believe in what you're doing and the true aspect of solving challenges that, for especially health challenges for your everyday person, be relentless in your pursuit. Don't stop. Don't let people deter you, and keep pushing forward. If I had a dollar for every time that someone said, oh well, you're in a market that has a couple big players, it's not going to work. Okay, great. No, that's not the case, right? If you look at any big industry, there's lots of competitors, and though a lot of competitors can make a lot of impact. So with that being said, is just keep pushing through. There's no industry out there that only has one or two competitors, especially when you're talking about a big industry. So be relentless in your pursuit, push forward, and focus on solving the issue for the users that you're working with.
Well, your users are definitely lucky to have you. Thank you so much for all of this. This has been super insightful. Appreciate your time.
No, absolutely, Christine. I appreciate being on here with you, and look forward to conversating more as well.
Let's get a burger soon.
Sounds good.